Hello, and welcome to the EcoSend podcast, a weekly podcast on becoming a climate conscious business. Every week, we'll be interviewing founders, marketers, and leaders who are championing the climate. The podcast is hosted by myself, James Gill, co-founder and CEO of Go Squared, and the makers of EcoSend. If you run a business or are responsible for growing one, and you want to have a positive impact on the environment, then listen on. Every episode, our goal is for you to learn something and be inspired to take some action. Every single one of us making small changes and some large changes will add up. We're all in this together. So let's get on with the show. Thanks so much for listening. Now let's meet today's guest. Hi there, welcome to another episode of the EcoSend podcast. The EcoSend podcast is a show each week where we're talking to inspiring leaders and people in the world of business, marketing, and in the charitable sector as well, about how to make a more sustainable, greener future for the world. Each episode is about 30 minutes long, and I'm thrilled this week to be joined by Rebecca Kimber of Create. Now, Rebecca is an expert on websites and online marketing with over 20 years of experience in the digital industry. She's passionate about having a positive impact on the planet and has been making changes to Create over the last few years to reduce its carbon footprint. So there's a lot I'm sure we're going to be learning from Rebecca today. With a focus on enabling small business owners to design and manage their own websites, Create's carbon neutral hosting and investments into energy efficient technologies means that you can have a website that's better for the planet and great for business too. So it feels like, Rebecca, you're doing a lot of stuff that's very, very aligned with what we're doing at EcoSend. I am so excited to be talking to you about this and many more things. How are you doing today? Good to see you.
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for that lovely intro. Yes.
Awesome.
We are. But I thought, can I just say something about that? I thought we've talked a little bit about what we're going to talk about, but this whole piece about being carbon neutral and how we describe ourselves and, you know, trying to do so without greenwashing or greenhushing and feeling like we're being accurate, and also in a way that the, you know, general consumers, because a lot of our customers are small business owners and, you know, individuals as well, understand what it is that we're selling, and what the benefits are, because most of our hosting is renewable energy, but because we can't really say where that energy's really actually come from, we're also doing, you know, renewable energy projects that we're investing in to do carbon offsetting as well, because we're just trying to do more, as much as we can do within the restrictions that we currently have with suppliers. And you probably have the same kinds of things where I learned recently that because we've been doing net zero kind of progress and journey since about 2019 maybe.
Right.
So it's quite a long time, but it's been a sort of slow thing. And we were quite lucky when we looked at a lot of our suppliers that actually they were kind of on the journey as well. You know, like Google and Cloudflare and people like that we use. And obviously there's some smaller suppliers too that not much, but the majority of what we are, you know, working with is. But what I learned on this course recently, because obviously all this stuff's moving so quickly, and I looked at my our sustainability page and I thought, oh dear, some of the language is not right now, you know. It's gone out of date. It's not how you would now want to talk about it. And when we were working out our carbon footprints, and I was saying, well, we're using all these suppliers, we're using renewable energy, and they said, but because the grid's only X percentage renewable energy, you can only say that actually, and know that this portion of everything that everybody's doing. So unless Google are off grid, doing all
entirely
from their own renewable energy, getting all this battery power, they can't say that it is net zero. They, you know, they can't say it's really renewable energy because you can't guarantee that it is. And so that was kind of a bit because I've been kind of like, we're going to net zero. And it was kind of light moment for me that actually this is why all these enormous companies have got these kind of like big 20-year plans, because actually our actual infrastructure, you know, globally has to get us there. Because I
Yeah.
can't, as a digital company, and you know this, you know, you've got to be up all
Yeah.
the time, you've got to have 99.9% reliability. Everybody
Yeah.
wants their websites. They can't.
Yeah.
It's not the same. Like you're living off grid. Oh, we haven't got a bit of energy tonight. Let's go play Cluedo in Torchlight.
Yeah, it's been a cloudy day today. Sorry, websites are offline.
Yeah, sorry, websites
Yeah.
are being throttled and everything's slow,
Yeah.
and that, you know, you might find a bit of downtime. We'll be out of business. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's all. I kind of took a bit more appreciation of how
Yeah.
we're on a longer journey, and I
Yeah.
kind of, you know, business owners were
Absolutely.
all like, yeah, let's do this, let's do that, come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
And actually, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, I can't actually get there.
Yeah.
Um, and even switching suppliers, I still can't actually get there. So
Yeah.
it then becomes challenging as to, well, we will get there. I'm not saying we won't get there. We will get there, but at the moment, I can't get there. And with things
Absolutely.
like the Advertising Standards Authority bringing out, you know, much tougher legislation around greenwashing, and you know, being able to back up your environmental claims, you know, and that's all great because there's loads of big organisations that are currently misleading the public,
Yeah.
saying things need to be, you know, they need to be fact checked. But at
Yeah.
the same time, for smaller businesses, it, especially those that don't have huge budgets to make investments in certifications and
Yeah.
spend the time granularly about every bit of carbon that they're using, it's really quite challenging to know how
Yeah.
to talk about themselves and not kind
Yeah.
of feel like you're, you know, someone's going to poke a torch at you in a minute and go, come on, what
Yeah.
are you actually doing?
Yeah.
And you
It's
must feel this. So it's gone.
absolutely. You know, yeah, there's so much to dig into on on all of the stuff you just spoke about there, Rebecca. Like, I think on the greenwashing, or I know there's a few previous episodes of the podcast where we talked about greenhushing as well, where like,
Yeah.
you know, people are so afraid to say the wrong thing that they say nothing, which on the
Yeah.
whole is probably a worse thing, because then yeah, we need more people talking about the climate. We need more people talking about what they're trying to do, and um and being quiet about things doesn't really help a conversation. And I know for us with EcoSend, we were initially, when we were throwing around the initial ideas, we were just terrified of putting anything out there because we didn't know how much we didn't know. And I think we just ended up kind of saying to ourselves, look, we know that there's a bunch we probably got wrong, but let's start. And it's led to all these conversations that you start having with people, and then you'll find out that like no one has all the answers, really. Like no one is sort of, I know absolutely 100% of all the information and I can tell you categorically what's right or wrong. Like there's a sliding scale and opinions and different levels of research in different facets and areas. And you know, even within the whole concept of climate, like there's people talk a lot about carbon removal and carbon offsetting, but then there's so many other
Yeah.
aspects that are like harder to measure as well, like uh you know, biodiversity and things like this, which also have a huge impact, which are, you know, so far off the radar. Like there's it's just such a complex web of things. And I think just more people talking about it and more people putting one foot in front of the other is a good thing, rather than waiting for some magical point where you have 100% clear information, because that day will never ever come, I don't think.
No.
But yeah, I must ask, Rebecca, you've been running Create, which is a fantastic platform for building websites, and you have clearly are passionate about the climate. So tell me about that journey. Like, how did you get to where you are?
Well, we'll be 22 years old this year.
That's
as,
some going.
yeah, and when we sort of started out originally, which is another thing that's quite interesting about our journey, is kind of coming back round to how we kind of optimize things. But when we started out our journey, my husband built the first sort of version of Create back in 1999.
Wow.
And it was 56 colors, so things were pretty bright. And
you don't need more
a
than
lot of
56 colors.
in design. No, actually, I people used to build kind of like red websites with yellow text, and accessibility wasn't the thing. And
yeah,
it was really, there were not that many shades of grey. So design has come a long way. But back then, when you built a website and you kind of, you thought about every pixel, and you thought about every kilobyte that you were putting on the web, because everybody was on dial-up, and so it was all about creating this really fast and tight experience for people, because if you didn't create this fast experience, they were gone. And over like this 20-year period, we've kind of gone from that very optimized, what do I need to have on there that's going to get the job done, so I can stick anything on there I like, and it won't matter because the infrastructure is there to support it. And I think we now need to kind of turn a corner with websites where actually everybody's much more aware of, I do need to optimize these things. I should optimize these images. I shouldn't put them on huge.
Yeah.
And it isn't because we've got the huge infrastructure to cope with it, but it's because of the amount of energy that it's seeing, that's driving huge amounts of investment in more servers and more equipment, and more energy into being taken from the grid for all of our internet usage. But it's not just the web. But
well, I guess it's I was just gonna say, it's such a fascinating area there, because I guess most businesses have a website, but for you, you're in this position where you have a website, but then you also impact the decisions that hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of businesses do with their website. So you have this incredible impact with the changes you make and the decisions you make, which I think is just so exciting about when you are yourselves building a platform.
Yeah, and that's part of that piece that I was just talking to you about this getting to net zero, and realizing I can't get to net zero, and I still want to kind of measure all of those bits and make sure that we have a really clear idea about what our carbon footprint is, but our own individual carbon footprint is actually quite small. And so our influence, and what I consider to be, the bigger piece about what we do, is talking to everybody else. How can you achieve this? How can we spread the word? How can we make people more aware that they need to think about these things? And not just websites, like your social media. Everybody's making all this constant content all the time, which is video, which is probably worse than than most websites that you're visiting. And we're just chucking it away. With a website, you're creating kind of an evergreen space. It stays there, you optimize it, you change it a little bit. But all of this social kind of content that's being made, it's there for now, and then it's gone, and it's all being stored forever. A bit like kind of like correspondence on emails and all those other things. We're just kind of creating this real problem for ourselves in the future. And that's where I've spent quite a lot of my time over the last few years as well, is just trying to get people more aware of that kind of digital world and what's behind the scenes of our laptops. There's 100 million servers powering the internet at the moment, and they are using lots of land, because they're enormous places like the Citadel that's in Reno, one of the biggest ones, and it's not on its own. It's 1.3 million square feet.
Wow.
And so it's taking up all this land, but it's also in Reno, Nevada, which is an area of water shortage, and they need so much. What people don't realize is, coming back to your point about nature as well, is that it's this journey that we're all on isn't just about carbon. It's about how we use the planet, and that involves nature and water and all the things that climate change are going to make really stressed. And so where a lot of these big places are built are where there are areas of big stresses of water. Places
Yeah.
like the Mississippi, where they're taking the water out of the rivers and using it to cool all these servers. And we're on a path to exponentially keep needing to build more of these facilities.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
need to be thinking about how we optimize, how we delete, how we declutter, because what we're using now is, I don't know, I don't have the numbers on the kind of population usage of the internet, but more and more people every day in the developing world are coming online, and
Yeah.
they are also wanting, and as they absolutely should, have access to all this information, have access to what they need to see, be able to use these tools for communication and everything else that we use them for every day and take for granted. And that
Yeah.
is going to continue to increase our needs for these data centers. And so
Yeah.
we do need to start to think about how we're going to manage that. I don't know if you saw it or not, but and maybe we can drop a link in afterwards, but there's a really good panorama program on the BBC about the cloud, which I think is
Yes. Yeah.
a
Yeah.
really good
Yeah.
explainer that's worth watching for half an hour,
Yeah. We'll
because it
definitely put the
does give
link
you
on the show notes, actually. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
about the scale of the amounts of water that they're using, but also the energy. Where they've got
Yeah.
these data centers in Ireland, they are using energy that's something equivalent to, whole cities, 100,000
Mm.
households, data center. And all of that is coming out of the national grid as
Yeah.
well. They just don't have those. Some data centers have got some investments in renewables, but a lot of them are just pulling from the national grid. And so
Yeah.
we've got to build more capacity for the national grid, build a green future, and keep powering more and more data centers,
Yeah.
which, it's unsustainable. It's unsustainable. It's
Absolutely.
unsustainable for the planet.
It is. It is, isn't it? And I think so many people barely even really like grok the idea of, I type in a URL on a web browser and that's going to servers that sit in a big
Yeah.
building somewhere. And then I think it's almost unimaginable the scale that those data centers are operating at. I remember hearing, I think, a talk from Amazon Web Services a while ago where they were saying, you're dealing at this kind of scale where you are literally like shipping in lorries of servers every day, because just the failure rate of servers means that you are, if one in, I don't know, a million goes wrong on any given day, like because there's literally millions and millions of machines, you like, a lorry turns up every day with new servers and a lorry leaves with servers that are no longer
Yeah.
working. Like trying to like compute as a person is just so, it's just mind-boggling. And yeah, and you think all of those machines have to be made as well, and have to be manufactured and shipped and then installed and then serviced and
Yeah.
used and suck energy all the time, and then end of life, what happens to them? It's like all of those things as well. Like, and all I'm doing is typing a URL into a browser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was quite surprised. Actually, I can't remember what it is, but maybe we could add to the notes afterwards. But I was quite surprised about how much carbon they now considered a Google search to be, because it was actually quite
Mm.
high. And obviously now they're adding into things like, AI to help you to answer queries
Yeah.
and things. That's quite carbon intensive as well. But it's like we've called it surfing the web and the cloud and all these nice things, and
Very fluffy.
it's not that
Mm.
at all. If it
Mm.
was pumping exhaust fumes out of your laptop all the time,
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
quickly get this kind of wow. It's actually, it's actually
Yeah.
really intensive for us to do things. I
Yeah.
shared a post the other day, and TikTok videos. 1 minute of TikTok is 2.36 grams that they estimate.
Is that the
And it's quite
estimate? Wow. Mm.
and so if you've watched that for 10 minutes, that's 20 grams of CO2 plus that you've probably consumed while not really thinking about what
Mm.
you're actually watching, or remember afterwards that you watched it.
Yeah.
So it's just being a bit more conscious of what we're all doing, I think, and maybe
Yeah.
spending a bit more time in nature.
Yes,
Because I think that
maybe.
that's one of the ways that we can, you know, kind of reconnect with the problem a bit, is actually spending a bit more time away from our screens and viewing things through our own eyes and getting out there and touching stuff and being present in the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Or we're all going to live in a virtual reality world where we experience nature through a digital lens. I don't know, that's the the worry, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So I didn't know, Rebecca, if you wanted to share anything more about so you were saying you've been learning a lot more about this journey to net zero, and how you're feeling that actually it's going to take a lot longer than you thought. What else has come from that, all of the stuff you've been learning there, and that journey you've been on? I'm keen to hear.
So we've always been, you know, quite an eco kind of company. With, you know, we chose our offices back in 2008 in a BREEAM rated building, and it had its own wind turbine, and it had underground heating. So it was, you know, it was part of things from you know, quite a long time ago. And I've always, you know, we've always been doing recycling and thinking about what we're doing and trying to get rid of our old documents and stuff. And we don't create a lot of waste because we're digital, and so we've never had a lot of, we try to give away as much of the stuff we don't need. So when COVID hit, we went full remote, pretty much recycled 10 years worth of stuff out of the office.
Wow. That must have been quite therapeutic.
It was. Well, I mean, we sold some stuff because we had some, you know, things that obviously people wanted to buy at the time, like chairs and things like that. And then there was just microwaves and plates and all the things we had used over the years, and they were people who were starting new homes and things like that. And nice. And like you were talking about servers, we had big servers that all sat in a room for quite a long time. We'd kind of had our own kit and then taken it all away on kind of Google and Amazon kind of direction. And that all went to our local college, still there in one of our local colleges.
Wow.
Students using it all for, you know, messing about with. And that's trying to just make sure that we're not throwing anything away as part of our kind of business as well. And everything, you know, there's that whole piece, that green piece about repurposing and making sure things get as much life as they can. But back kind of that sort of time, 2019, 2010, I can't remember exactly when it was, when David Attenborough did kind of like those programs about nature and about, you know, how much of it is just going away. Because I think that's, you know, we all talk about net zero and we talk about CO2, but people don't really understand what CO2 is. They can't, you know, it's very difficult to say, well, what does this ton of CO2 look like? We can't see it. I was having this conversation with my son the other day, and he was like, well, it's nothing. It doesn't weigh anything. And my other son, who's a bit older and, you know, knows a bit more, but likes to be kind of like, well, he's like, well, of course it weighs something. Everything has a weight, you know.
Definitely the scientist in the family.
He definitely, you know, is really into that kind of stuff. And then I sort of said to him, "Well, Google this, you know, the big balloon, because it's worth going and have a look at that if you don't have any kind of idea about it." So they did some installations where they've had these big ton balloons that they've put around. I think there might be one in Trafalgar Square, kind of give people an idea about what a ton of CO2 actually is that we're making. But I think from the point of view of kind of connecting with people, what's more important and more tangible to people a lot of the time is that impact on people and on nature and animals. And, you know, it's quite difficult to have this kind of like, I feel really connected to CO2, because you don't, but you can feel very connected to deforestation and what is happening out in the world, and the loss of bugs. Where are all the bees this year? There were lots of them last year. I haven't seen hardly any honeybees so far in my garden this year at all. A third of them, I was told, have died over the winter because of the very wet winter. And for me, you know, that's what's important, isn't it? Is how we continue to do business and do it consciously, so that actually our impact on the environment and the places that we live and the world that we have is in a better place.
Yeah.
And quite difficult when it's digital, because I don't, you know, I don't work with nature.
Yeah.
You know, everything we do is sitting at a computer screen. You never see of it. And, you know, we are part of this problem. Websites are part of this problem. But on the alternative hand to that, you know, we don't want everybody to go back to sending brochures through the post and cutting down more. And, you know, the postal service, there's much more CO2 from that than from doing this, or having this call instead of us getting on trains or planes or whatever, up, driving our cars around to have a conversation.
Taking the corporate jet to Brighton to see you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
One of our and so, you know, trying to tie back what we're doing to nature and how we can kind of give back and how we can be a better business through what we're doing, alongside obviously helping people to be more aware of what the problem is, so that we can be more conscious in our internet use. But we started planting trees, because I think trees are one of the things that create better habitats for the planet. And we'd signed up to an organization called Ecology to kind of start to think about how we would offset our or reduce our footprints to start with, or just offsetting to start with, because I think even if you don't know how to measure, Ecology is a really great way to just go and pay a monthly fee, and they invest in carbon reduction for you that you know is going to be, you know, solidly checked over. They plant some trees for you, and you can do that for everyone in your team based on kind of like what they think, you know, how busy your team is, whether you go on lots of travel, you know, for business or not, and buy different kinds of plans from them. And it's like, I think we were on the middle plan, but I think the basic plan's like £9 per person per month. And it just starts you on that journey. It's really
hard to say no to, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. And it started us kind of on that journey. And then I thought to myself, well, okay, I'm paying this much money per month per employee. What I'll do is I'll get a big spreadsheet. This comes back to that thing you were talking about that imperfect action. I'll get a big spreadsheet and I'll work out the best of my abilities, what I know about how many days everybody worked for us for the last 18 years, whatever it was at that particular point. And even down to contractors. My husband and I, maybe not so much, because that was a bit difficult, because we've, you know, as a founder, you know, you work all whenever.
Yeah. Which of the 24 hours is it?
Yeah, exactly. I didn't have kids back then either. So, you know, I had all the time in the world to just do internet things and what I wanted to do in business. It was like, eat dinner, talk business, you know, do the washing up, talk business. So that you'll probably be pleased to hear there's a bit more kind of like of a definition in my life now.
Yeah. I'm not here to judge, don't worry.
No, but that's, you know, it's definitely got a much nicer balance. But you know, I do like doing what we do, and so that always helps when you're doing something. But anyway, back to my point. I got this big spreadsheet. I wrote out everybody's names. I wrote their start and their finish dates of when they'd all worked for us. Worked out how many days that all was, and then basically, and so therefore how many months it was, and then basically I just went back to Ecology and I basically said, right, okay, well, if this is their measurement that was based on, I think Dr. Berners-Lee's, you know, kind of like carbon footprint. I think they've increased it since then, but I sort of thought I'll just basically do what I think that is, and I'll stick some more on top just in case. I planted however many trees it was and however much carbon reduction it was on their monthly plan. So however many months in the past we'd had people working for us. And so I think, you know, that's not an exact science. It's not, you know, what people might say is properly measured, but it is taking action, and it's taking action in a kind of sensible, logical way that other people can do, you know? Because and we need to not only be looking at the future, but we need to be working out how we're going to draw back down the CO2 and put back the planet. And so for those of us that can, it is about what else can I do? What more can we do? How can I do more than I actually you know, you have
Absolutely.
to, this thing, because we all do have a footprint, and we have all, you know, we have all created the problem.
Yeah, yeah. It's
And
a
even
really
though,
good. I was just gonna say it's a really good point because I know one of the earlier episodes we did, we were talking about people talk a lot about sustainability, but actually go like we need to kind of go beyond trying to do
yes,
sustainable stuff, but like we need to make up for all the stuff we've already
yeah,
done. And so you're thinking there of like, let's go back and try and retroactively sort out all of the stuff we've been doing as a business so far. I think it's just so, yeah, it's very inspiring actually, because yeah, we've got to we've got to make up for that stuff first and then get ourselves
yeah,
on a better place. But also like I love that you're yeah that whole concept of just taking action. I think it applies in business as well, just generally. But like if you wait till you've got some supposedly perfect calculation and plan, like you probably never do anything.
yeah,
And I think even the smartest, most scientific businesses trying to do this, I think there's such a margin of error for like uh how you actually, because you cannot get to like something that's perfectly accurate for these calculations. Like, it's just totally impossible. Or the
yeah,
time to do that would take
yes,
forever. So
yeah,
yeah, we there's got to be some pragmatism, I think, in how we do this.
yeah. It's like I can't really it our carbon footprint when we did this, because I've just been, as I said a little bit earlier on, we've just been on this net zero course where obviously they were saying, you know, because you're using the grid, you can't be net zero.
Mm,
Um, and you know, they work it kind of out on financials of what you spent on certain things if you don't know what
mm,
those suppliers are. I could go back over the last 20 years and, you know, retro work everything out, but you know, there's a diminishing returns on the
yeah,
investment here, because the amount
yeah,
of it's actually going to take. I think when we had our office, our carbon footprint, and obviously this is loose because I haven't finished the calculations, came out at something like 30 something tons. And so
hmm
it's not, it's, you know, it's a it's 30 tons, but it's not really that big in the grand scheme of things.
hmm
And I think we'd got down to maybe 23 tons. Now we're all remote and we're obviously
hmm
doing a bit less, that kind of thing. But in order to do the calculation fully and to go back all those times, the amounts of CO2 that I'm really actually measuring are really, really small. And so
mm.
my kind of feeling is that I'm sweating the small stuff for the sake of being able to, you know, absolutely say this is what it actually
mm.
exactly is. And instead of that, I could spend my half hour talking to you on this podcast and have a bigger
Yeah,
impact. And I could
yeah,
social posts and, you know, talk to other people or learn some more things that help me
yeah,
on this journey to, you know, to have to hopefully have an impact and an influence that's bigger than myself, that helps other people to be on this journey
yeah,
too, and for them to make those changes and for them to start to reduce their CO2. And that's where
yeah,
the win for me is.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I want to measure it,
Totally,
but
totally agreed.
but
Yeah,
got
I,
in a climate emergency
yeah,
to do that.
I totally, and I also think like there's definitely that attitude side of things where, I yeah, you as an individual and as business like are keen to figure out like that estimate and probably do more than you need to offset and reduce it. Whereas I guess there's some businesses where you try and make that number as small as possible and do as little as you can to try and solve it. And I think there's a probably an attitude thing there which is really important, and as to not take for granted that you're doing the right thing and trying to do the right
Yeah,
thing as well as best you can, not trying to do it as a tick box exercise and yeah, try to do the least possible.
yeah. And I think that there's, you know, there were some people on the net zero course where you could see that that measurement was really important. You know, going forwards, there were there was a pet food producer where it was obviously really important to know what that product was costing to produce, and they'd already done loads of things as well in regards to their building, but they were looking at more, and they had more levers they could pull. They had more control than I don't know what their carbon footprint was, but I would assume it was bigger than mine. So there are the sorts of things that I'm talking about in my business and trying to look pragmatically at it, that shouldn't put other businesses off from doing the measurements that they really need to do. Because if you're selling a product, you do need to know what that CO2 is, because hopefully in the future that product's going to have a CO2 marker on it, like if it's food, and consumers are going to be able to see, and the internet will have got to the point where I'll be able to do that too, because everybody else in my supply chain will be measuring as well. So it's all circular. But I guess my point is that for those of us that are small businesses, or they're tight on time and they are doing a lot, they shouldn't sweat the small stuff so much. Because you can only do what you can do, and you can only change and influence what you can change and influence. If you change and influence your suppliers and talk to more people, that helps to just change and influence everybody, and that gets the job done faster. Because the situation we're in at the moment is that we've got a lot of fear mongering going on. It's all like doom and gloom. There's so much, people who've got climate anxiety. What are we going to do? How are we going to fix this? And all that kind of negative kind of talk that comes back to, what can I change? What can I influence? And that's the attitude I've taken with my business. Who can I influence? What's important? What can I talk about? How can I help people to come on this journey and see that it's a better future that we're creating? It's more, come on, you've got to do this because you're driving your car too much, or you're doing this, or you're doing that. You should stop eating all this stuff. Everything should be done in a more kind of pragmatic, sensible kind of way, because we can't all be beaten into submission. You know what people are, start to beat them with a stick. Come on, we've all got to get here, be greener. It doesn't, anybody that's into marketing knows that those kind of things generally don't really work to get you to,
but if anything, it pushes people the other way, doesn't it? It's
exactly. And so I think that's where that whole nature piece comes back in connecting with nature and understanding how we all want that future, which is better for the world. And how we all get there in a sensible kind of way, with us all doing a bit and us all making some small changes, but hopefully having the options to do that as well, so we can make better choices.
Absolutely.
It's coming.
It's coming. We're getting there. I think. Rebecca, we're basically out of time. I know there's other topics we could cover, but I didn't know if there was any final things you wanted to just chat about briefly. I know there was one other important thing you're involved with, which is the Million Tree Pledge. I don't know if you want to quickly just summarize what you're doing there, and maybe I'd love to hear more about that.
So I mentioned earlier we were planting trees, and we kind of started planting trees, and we sort of planted 40,000 trees for those employees for the past, and we started to kind of like tie tree planting to what we were doing, and then coincidentally we were introduced to some other people that were doing some tree planting, and to someone that I would now consider to be a friend called Marcus Hemsley, and he runs his own agency, and he'd had COVID and he was having trouble breathing, and he decided to himself, it would be really fantastic, I want to plant 1 million trees and I want to find some other people to do that with us. So
as you
do ecology connected us all together, and there was about 20 of us on a call. It was simple, do you want to plant 1 million trees? And I was like, well, we could do that. Sort of on that journey, I'll go back to the team and I'll ask everybody what they think, and obviously the team are like, yeah, we'll do that, because I'm sure if you went and asked your employees, they'd be like, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And so we went back and said, yeah, we'll do it. And it ended up being about 12 of us, I think, that kind of became the 12 founding pledges. So it was 12 million trees pledged. And since then, we've now got 53 pledges, and
Wow.
12 million trees in the ground that are planted or nearly planted or at least paid for. And
Wow.
that's in two and a bit years. So that's when I was talking about that influence you can have. We don't have any money.
Yeah.
It's a pledge. You just agree you're going to do it. We do it by, the pledge is basically try and get somebody else to also plant a million trees as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of grown from basically talking about it and spreading that message of hope. Look, we can do this. You don't need to say you're going to do it in a year, although one of the pledges did do it in a year, which was absolutely fantastic. We've now got 2 pledges that have actually planted a million trees each,
Wow.
which is really awesome. And we're not doing it as part of that kind of carbon offsetting. We're doing it as part of, we need to fix the planet, and we need to create people to for people and for plants and nature, and safe spaces for them, and nature corridors and all sorts of things. And so anyway, if anybody's up for planting trees, get in touch.
Yeah, I'm not sure I could do all of them today, but that is incredible. No, thank you so much for sharing that. I know we are very keen to become part of this as well, and I hope that many people listening will go check it out and learn more and consider for themselves. I what a fantastic thing, and absolutely incredible to think that starts from just someone with an idea, wanting to do that, bringing people together, and what a chain reaction of events can happen. That's incredible. What a lovely note to finish on, I think, Rebecca. I think that's fantastic. What a fascinating show. I honestly, it's been a pleasure talking to you about so many of these topics here. I feel like you're so similar to the way we're thinking about things at EcoSend, and I hope people have been jotting down lots of notes as they've been listening along to this. Thank you. If anyone wants to find out more about yourself or create, where can they find you, Rebecca? I believe you've got a few places.
They can look me up on LinkedIn. I'm Rebecca Kimber on LinkedIn, as I should be. And our website is www.create.net. And you head over to our blog. There's a few posts there about making your website more sustainable and
awesome.
Making low carbon bits and pieces about Million Tree Pledge. And the Million Tree Pledge is at www.milliontreepledge.org as well. So
amazing.
Pledges and a bit there.
Great stuff. We will link to all of those in the show notes. And I mentioned it to Rebecca. I must give the team at Create a big high five for the amazing Twitter handle you have, which is twitter.com/create, which shows the benefits of starting early in the online world.
Yes. It does.
Yeah.
We're very lucky.
Rebecca, it has been a pleasure speaking to you. Congratulations as well on just building such a wonderful business. It's not often that you speak to someone who's been, is it 22 years? 22 years, you said?
October. Yes.
That is absolutely astounding. That is incredible. We hope it would be lovely if more people run businesses like you're doing. So thank you so much for being on the show today. And I hope those at home have been enjoying, or wherever you might be, whether you're at home, on the train, driving, I don't know. Not driving, of course, not listening to the EcoSend podcast. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the show. And if you enjoyed this show, please do leave a review or a rating or whatever player you're using, because it really helps more people find the show and hear wonderful stories like Rebecca's today. So thank you for listening, and thank you, Rebecca. And
thank you for having me.
Thank you, and we will catch you again very soon. Cheers.